Hey everybody, this is Adam B. Levine from Let's Talk Bitcoin. We had so many new show submissions for the contest, we've opted to create a page where you can listen to all of them at your own pace. Visit letstalkbitcoin.com/contest to peruse the entire set, and feel free to vote for more than one. We'll be selecting multiple shows to join the network in Q1. Enjoy the show, and remember to vote at letstalkbitcoin.com/contest.
Welcome to Bitcoins and Gravy, Episode 1.
Today, Bitcoins are hovering around $975.
Now that's gravy. Welcome to Bitcoins and Gravy, and thanks for joining us today as we podcast from East Nashville, Tennessee. I'm John Barrett.
And I'm Lid Shaw.
We're two Bitcoin enthusiasts who love to talk about Bitcoin
and share what we learn with you, the listener. Welcome to the show, and thanks for listening.
On today's show, we talk about altcoins, how they stand up to Bitcoins, and where we're going from here.
We also hit the streets to talk to the people of Nashville and find out if anyone out there even knows what the heck this Bitcoin thing is all about. I just want to ask, have you heard about Bitcoins? No?
What's Bitcoin?
It's a new kind of currency.
Oh, no, I'm all right, man.
Yes, have you ever heard of Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, anything like that?
I don't really understand them. It's not like real money, but for some reason people use it. I mean, I hear it's really becoming really popular, but that's about it.
And I can't be any help because I have no idea what you guys are actually talking about. I'm not like being rude. I just have no idea what they are.
Have you ever heard about Bitcoin?
No.
No?
But I would like to see one.
You'd like to see one?
Yeah.
I'd like to see one too. They're worth a lot of money.
You gonna make one?
I don't know if I'm gonna make one or not. I might try to.
Of that one.
If you've heard about Bitcoin,
I have.
you have?
I've heard that the monetary value is cheaper than like U.S. dollars.
Anything else you've heard?
I know very little about it.
Oh, okay. Where did you hear about it?
On NPR, actually.
So I'm here at Walmart, at the big super Walmart here in Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm gonna go around and ask people if they know anything about Bitcoin. So far, nobody knows anything about it, but I'll keep trying. I'm bound to find somebody here who might have heard of it. Excuse me, sir. Mm-hmm. Have you ever heard of Bitcoins? No? Excuse me, do you mind, folks mind if I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Have you ever heard of Bitcoins?
I've never heard anything like that before.
Have you ever heard of Bitcoins?
No, never heard of Bitcoin.
All right. Have you heard about Bitcoins?
Yeah, I have.
Can you tell me what they are?
It's a currency, and from what I understand, which is not much, but let me see. I think it's an anonymous person invented it. We don't know who invented it, but there's a limited amount of them, and you mine them. Yeah. And once they are mined, there's a set value, which seems to be increasing lately, I've heard. Basically, it's a digital currency. I have a friend who not only owns Bitcoins, but he makes the computers that mine them. And he has made quite a bit of money, as well as Litecoin. I don't know if you're familiar with Litecoin. Uh-huh. He's making money, I'll tell you that much. Yeah, his license plate says Bitcoin on it.
That's great.
In today's podcast, we are joined by Bitcoin enthusiast Ben Stuckey. Ben is here with us to help shed some light on Bitcoin alternatives, better known as altcoins. Ben, welcome.
Thank you.
Can you give us a little background about how you first got interested in Bitcoins and how that led to your interest in altcoins?
Sure. So it's been pretty recent, I'd say last 9 months or so, even since I remember hearing about it. I'm a developer by trade. I help organize Hack Nashville, which is a hackathon in town. And I first remember hearing about it through participants there. Had maybe bought a few, were experimenting with ideas how to hack on Bitcoin-related things. And I remember specifically thinking, oh, that's cool, I should just grab some just for fun, and then didn't. And then here we are now, you know. But that's life. And so I kept up with it in passing as a sort of technical oddity or interest. And then maybe 5 or 6 months ago, really dug deep into keeping up with the news on it and sort of daily happenings.
So Bitcoins was your first introduction and interest, and then from there you started hearing about altcoins. Do you happen to know right now how many different altcoins there are? I don't.
I don't know a number, dozens at least. I mean, there's sort of like altcoins on the exchanges, and then there's even more litany of proposed altcoins or specs for altcoins that, people are on these systems and mining them, but no one's really trading them yet.
And do you have a favorite altcoin or one that you favor or a few that you favor that you think are going to do well? And if so, why do you think they're going to do well beyond just speculation for profit?
Yeah, I mean, in general, my theory is that altcoins are viable. So I think they're going to continue to rise in value, but for different reasons. Different altcoins sort of have different value propositions.
Can you give an example?
So Litecoin, as sort of the leading altcoin, I guess, their value proposition was in the script. Well, a few. One is the script hashing algorithm is different than Bitcoin's. And at the time, it was supposed to be more egalitarian because you could mine it on CPUs. And Bitcoins were the mining was more and more specialized. And then also, there's a lot of talk about Litecoin being capable of a faster transaction time. Validation time of the transaction. So that's an example of a value proposition that one of the altcoins has. Now, the script-based hashing eventually they'll have specialized ASIC chips for that. So I don't know how large an argument that is in that case, but
coming out mid-2014 from what I read.
Right.
Which will essentially put my 3 little GPUs to rest.
Yep. So some of the different altcoins have different propositions. Quark, as an example, had some more interest recently, and their proposition is a little bit different in that it's on the security side. So they have a much more complicated hashing setup. So that includes multiple algorithms. Everything's hashed multiple times through these separate algorithms.
Is there an advantage to that?
Only if there's a threat to the hashing algorithm that the other coins use. So if SHA-1 seems to be threatened and people are worried about that, then there's an advantage to the Quark system. But I don't think there will be real threats to it, but perceived threat will continue to raise Quark prices.
Are you invested in Quark?
No. Not at the moment.
I have a few Quark. Let me ask you, what, in your opinion, is the utility of Quark as opposed to, let's say, the utility of Bitcoin?
I mean, utility-wise, I think they're even stance. They're really similar setup from my understanding. I'm not a Quark expert, but I think the major difference is really in the extra cryptography involved. So it's really a security value proposition on that one. Utility-wise, they're both verifying transactions on their blockchains. So similar concept there.
So Quark is more secure than Bitcoin is? Is that the idea? Because I thought Bitcoin was supposed to be super secure.
It is. Yeah, that's the thing. It is super secure. Quark is, you could say objectively more secure. It just includes more algorithms and more cryptography than Bitcoin. I mean, you could make up another coin that does twice as much cryptography and maybe includes some different, probably more obscure hashing algorithms. And you could say objectively, this is more secure than Quark.
Or how secure do you need to be once you're completely secure?
I feel pretty secure myself. I mean, I don't know.
And Lidge, you mentioned, I think yesterday, something about master coins. You'd read an article about master coins?
I was listening to this podcast that we may be airing on, Let's Talk Bitcoin. They were talking about Mastercoin, and my understanding of Mastercoin was that it could be viewed as an app that was built on top of Bitcoin. Bitcoin would almost be like an operating system that Mastercoin was built on top of that allowed you to do stuff and also trade between different altcoins and that sort of thing. But again, I'm so brand new to this that I'm really playing a fast game of catch up here.
Ben, what can you tell us about the coding that can be added on top of Bitcoin or that can ride on Bitcoin? How would you describe how that's done? What's some of the coding? What are some of the advantages and utility that you've heard about that Bitcoin offers and that some of the other altcoins offer?
Yeah, so Bitcoin seems to have a lot of utility in transactions and the types of transactions that are available. So a lot of my knowledge of this area is kind of secondhand, but my understanding is the transactions can include sort of three-party systems. So it's naturally set up where you can do sort of an escrow transaction, escrow type. And you can, on the blockchain, include random text of a certain length. So you could do proof of existence, say hash of a file or of a document you have, put it in the blockchain purely because it's immovable. So you want proof of existence of this item. Simply the hash of it proves that you knew of its existence at that time.
So, and this is, you're getting onto a topic that I thought was pretty fascinating in this too, which is they talk about using Bitcoin in the hash blockchain to prove copyright. For example, if you've written a work of writing or music or whatever, you've got a creative work. I suppose if you've recorded a song, you could potentially put it into the blockchain to prove copyright on that song.
Yeah.
Does that sound like that's an accurate understanding?
Yeah, that's an accurate understanding. It's proof of existence. So yet to be proven in court, probably.
Right.
But yeah, that's
you still have to police it.
Right. Yeah.
Content-wise, do you think that in addition to text, audio and video can be added to these transactions?
Not to my knowledge in the Bitcoin spec. I would be surprised if they could. But I think mostly when people are talking about these items, unless they're textual and small enough, they're usually talking about having a hash of the item. And a hash is, it's essentially, you can think of it as a string, certain character length. And it uniquely identifies a digital file or document or object of some kind.
Okay.
So if you say you have an MP3 that you want to copyright, you know, the audio or the recording in it, you can get a hash of that file and use the hash in a transaction as, say, comments in a transaction. And that's proof of existence that you had possession of that MP3 at that time. So you can precede proof of existence of anything else that might happen.
So alt currencies or altcoins, are there any other ones that you're bullish on? Any other ones that you've learned about? And how about name coins? Do you like name coins?
Name coins, I've heard about in passing. Seems sort of interesting. I'm not bullish on it.
Namecoins has something to do with being a decentralized name server, correct?
It has something to do with that issue.
Right.
But I don't know enough to speak on it.
Untouchable domain names. I have a domain name, and you can neither touch my domain name nor the content. I don't know.
Well, I think, and again, I don't know much about it, but I know the domain system now is centralized, and you have to go through domain name servers and all that kind of thing, I believe.
That's right.
And the Namecoin is decentralized. The only last thing I think I know from listening to somebody explain it was that you could have a website that was, bittalk.bit, for example.
Oh, yeah.
.bit.
Yeah, that's right. That's interesting. The interesting part to me is it's not so much the name server part, which seems cool. I mean, it's a little gimmicky, but it's the sort of psychological aspect of claims. Like you have to claim something in this system, claim a name,
right,
along with the coin system. It's a little interesting. The one I've been bullish on lately is Gridcoin, which isn't actually in exchanges yet, although I saw it looks like they might get into Cryptsy soon.
Gridcoin.
Gridcoin.
Not to be confused with Gritcoin. That would be something we might have in Tennessee.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So down at the Biscuit House.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, the way I look at the altcoins is to hopefully predict value of them or to guess at. You see how they're differentiated. I mean, anyone could say, I'm going to use the exact same rules as Bitcoin. I'm starting my own blockchain. Let's all do this. And they have an alt and make up a name, get a domain. They have an altcoin. But probably no one's going to ride that train.
Right.
There's no reason to do that instead of the others.
Right.
So these altcoins are competing. It's almost like natural selection. They're sort of competing on alternate ways of having a Bitcoin type system that might be better. And I think the values are sort of support of, I like this differentiation or that one. Gridcoin is interesting because it has real world utility. I mean, I think there is utility to validating the blockchain and providing security. But Gridcoin will validate proof of work on BOINC, which is a distributed computing system that's used for mainly research and higher education projects or medical research, things like that. So that's a separate system that's been running for a while. Gridcoin will check proof of work on that system to be sure you're utilizing your CPU to run these useful projects. And it'll give you credit when you successfully mine a block. The mining part and the coin part runs similar to other systems. But instead of just using all the electricity and resources on the mining process, it's also forcing you to use a decent amount toward utilization, processing towards probably a decent goal, maybe cancer research or something of the type.
Yeah, have you ever heard of Bitcoins?
No, I haven't.
You have not?
I have not. No.
Well, so you're working the jewelry and watches counter here. If somebody was to come up and offer to buy an expensive watch and they wanted to use Bitcoins to pay for it, what would you say to them?
Well, I would have to call customer service or one of the managers to see what it was, if they knew what it was, because I have no idea what it is.
Excuse me, ma'am. Do you mind if I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Have you ever heard of Bitcoins?
I've never heard of it before in my life.
Would you like to know what it is?
Sure.
Okay. It's a new form of money that people are using to buy and sell things on the internet. You're working here at Walmart, right? If somebody came up to you and said they wanted to buy a Christmas tree and they offered to pay you in Bitcoins, what would you say to them?
I would tell them that's not a form of money that I think that we accept.
You've heard of Bitcoins.
I've heard of Bitcoins. I know that a Bitcoin is a form of currency. I know that Bitcoin is a form of currency that can be used to trade in slaves and drugs and hitmen and murders and illegal, illicit, terrible, dark things. The realm of the deep web where bad things happen.
Excuse me, ma'am. Have you ever heard of Bitcoins?
I have not. I've heard of bit strips, but I haven't heard of Bitcoins. What are Bitcoins?
Bitcoins are a new form of digital money that people use to buy and sell things
Never
with.
in my life have I ever heard for that. Never in my life. I've never heard.
But what was it? You said you'd heard of something else. What was that?
The bit strip cartoons on Facebook.
On it.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so if somebody was to come up to you in Walmart or somewhere else and offer you Bitcoins for, say, that leather jacket, what would you say?
First, I would probably get on my phone and see what the Bitcoins are worth, and I would probably do it.
All right, cool. Right on. Yeah. Thanks very much.
No problem.
So now Bitcoin, a common understanding, or the one that seems most remarkable, is that it can be exchanged for dollars. It's a currency and it has dollar value. Yep. Do all the coins and the altcoins come into the market with the intent that they could be exchanged for money, or are some of them just an application that you're going to use to validify things?
All the ones I've come across so far, except for maybe there's one that I think was called Test Coin, which was purely for testing purposes. But other than that, I think they're all coming in the market with the assumption that there's some monetary value to be assigned to it, and that it probably derives from the processing work and electricity, at least, that was used during the mining process for that particular coin.
Because of mining, there's value implicit in or inherent in it, just by being created.
Yeah. And of course, on the different trade sites, there's always talk about this coin's a scam coin. They started this coin purely to get people interested in it. They talk it up on the chat boxes. People go there, they buy a bunch of coins, the volume increases, the price goes up. What happens? Maybe the coin's going to disappear, and the people who started it, who initially mined, let's say, 20 million coins, all they needed to do is go up to a penny each, and they can jump out and have a bunch of cash, and everybody else who's invested in them is left with nothing. And that, I think that is still an issue, even with coins that have utility. When people talk a coin up and then a bunch of people start buying it and people see the buys and people see the volume increasing, that does increase the value, or the price rather, of that coin. And so that can propel a coin, and then that can turn around a week later and you can see that coin's value dropping drastically, and people are gaining and losing money in this whole speculative. And those are the people talk about Bitcoins being a bubble. Of course, it's not, but some of these other altcoins, you have seen some pretty substantial bubbles, and people have lost money. Alternatively, there's also a way to make money investing in some of these altcoins, and buy 2 million of them and wait till they move over a decimal point, and you've made a couple Bitcoins. How many are you gonna buy? You'll buy as many as you can?
Yeah, I'll hold my Bitcoin, but I'll definitely put a decent amount.
Couple million.
Well,
10, 20 million?
I don't quite have that on hand.
Well, if they're worth, 1/100,000th of a penny.
Oh yeah, of the coin.
Of the coin,
yeah,
as they start, sure.
I'd get what I can, basically what's not living expenses for the month, I'd put into that.
Where does one go to find out about the newest coins being created?
Oh man. Most people look at Cryptseek just for altcoins because it has the most abundant amount. I don't know if it's just acceptance criteria or they're on top of things, or what way to look at that. But and there's a lot of there's a lot of talk. There's definitely a lot of speculation going on there. But that's why I like what this lends to technical people, because we can go and sort of browse around. A lot of it's hype, but we can go look at a coin and say, okay, well, what are they talking about? What are the differences in this coin? Is it just different rules? Mm-hmm. Do I think those rules are meaningful? Do I think that the changes are meaningful? And then, I feel like I can compare it against my values or what I think's important in a coin and say, yeah, this is viable, this is going to grow, or no, this is crap, I don't want to, waste time on it.
What's to prevent somebody from just going around and looking for all the new coins and just kind of putting $10 down on every new coin when it doesn't cost hardly anything at all, and just kind of spreading the benefits there of all the different
nothing.
coins?
That's what I do.
Nothing. Yeah. I mean, I think give it a try. It's like coin diversification, say. A lot of the community is still figuring out, do we think anything of the altcoins at all? I think definitely don't put everything into altcoins. It's a risky business. You want to have a major stake in Bitcoin. But I think it's worth putting a little chunk of diversification in some altcoins that seem valid to you.
People draw the analogy of gold and silver with Bitcoins, and they say that then Litecoins is the silver, as Bitcoin is the gold. What do you think about that, and what do you think we can see Litecoin doing? As we're all pretty optimistic about how Bitcoin's going to do. What do you think about that silver Litecoin?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what to think of it yet. I mean, I feel really confident that Litecoin is going to have ASIC chips soon enough. So whatever difference it had in the fact that it doesn't have as large a mining commitment is quickly dissipating. And the only other major argument seems to be validation of transactions, so the time to validate a transaction. And I don't know if that difference is going to stick, or if there's going to be change in Bitcoin to improve theirs, or what goes on there.
So Litecoin has a faster validation of transaction than Bitcoin does.
Yeah.
So that's its advantage right now over Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's the argument for it.
And the fact that it's a lot less expensive to get.
Yeah.
Well, there's a psychological advantage there that if people can't own a single Bitcoin, or they can't own 5 Bitcoins, they can own 5 Litecoins, so they can own a Litecoin, and that psychologically, I've read, makes you able to sleep at night.
Yeah. So one of my interests in Gridcoin is it provides utility, but a lot of the argument against Bitcoin is its lack of utility for the CPU cycles and electricity. It's wasted electricity. Actually, a lot of news that talks about it elaborates on how complicated the math is to create. It's actually not hard for the computer to run. It's mostly just random guesses. It's brute forcing a solution. It's not figuring anything out. It's just guessing a lot. Actual math is fast to run.
Like Edison?
Yeah.
That's right. It's 99% perspiration.
Just trial and error until you get there. So but just wait till we can have something, wouldn't it be awesome if we could have like diet coin, where it's like the more you work out, or the more you ride your bike, or go for a run, or get into good shape, the more the healthier you are, the more coins you get. Well, and then also another topic that I thought I was understanding was that the idea that with an arms race, for example, in the military, it brings in all kinds of new technologies and advancements in science and things like that. And I just wonder if there's kind of a digital computing arms race that comes from this mining of coins, and whether that could, take us into a whole world of new computing, or if it's maybe not enough to do that. Who knows?
These are all reasons why I like the Gridcoin concept. I mean, It's not really that I'm like, here's a new coin, get rich. There's a lot of reasons why I think here's something that provides utility. So there's a lot of processing power, but it's mainly now, I would think, in the ASIC chips. And the ASIC chips, all that they can do is this one thing. They do nothing else. There's no potential there. Their only potential is to mine Bitcoin, and a very specific, they can't even mine Litecoin. I mean, the smallest little change they couldn't cope with. So, I mean, that's what makes ASICs different from CPU. There's sort of limitless potential in CPU. It can do almost anything, but the ASIC chips only do that one thing. They do it incredibly fast. They do it very well. They do it probably power efficient, certainly compared to the CPU, but it's all they do. And there's other ASIC chips. I mean, like we talked about the Litecoin, there's some ASIC chips that are proposed to come out for Litecoin, or we think they will. But there's ASICs in everyday computers. GPUs have a ASIC chip. I mean, we don't really call it ASIC anymore, but it's built on, and it's for decoding video in popular formats.
And what's the A in ASIC stand for again?
I think it's application-specific integrated chip.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. So it means all the wiring on the chip is hard-coded, especially to run that thing. There's no programming. It's all electronics. So it's like waterworks. You send one signal in one side, you get the other signal out the other, and it's doing all the computation hard-coded on the chips inside.
The singular
There's no
goal
programming.
being speed.
Speed, yeah.
That's it, yeah. But, you have this massive infrastructure of computers in the Bitcoin community all over the world. What if that same computing power could be... a coin could come along and it would have utility like Gridcoin.
Yep.
And you could say to everybody, hey, you can use anything that you have. You can use your GPU, your ASIC, your CPUs.
Yep.
You can use any of that to mine this coin.
Right.
And then we have a coin that has even more utility than Gridcoin. That kind of power could change the world.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm being optimistic.
Right. It's hard problems. I mean, there's something to be said about it being hard to do that. Like when you run processes, CPU processes that have utility, like Gridcoin uses BOINC, the fact that it has utility means there's non-randomness. And the non-randomness means that there's more security risk. So a lot of the security of mining at the moment relies on the fact that it's random. It's brute force. It's random guessing at what the solution will be. Proof of work for systems that provide utility is harder. I think it's possible and worth doing. But we'll see what happens.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed listening to this show with our guest, Ben Stuckey. Thanks very much for listening. We really appreciate you guys. And if you enjoyed what you heard, please go over to iTunes and leave us a review, whether it's a 3-star review or a 5-star review.
I'm John Barrett.
And I'm Lyd Shaw. You've been listening to
Bitcoins and Gravy.
If you enjoyed the show you just listened to, visit letstalkbitcoin.com/contest and send 0.1 millibit or 0.0001 Bitcoin to the address indicated for that show. Thanks for helping.